Imagine this. Right now, you and everything around you are hurtling through space at a speed exceeding 1,000 miles per hour. Sounds like science fiction, right? But that is our reality. It's the speed of the Earth's rotation at the equator. We don't notice this movement because we are completely accustomed to it. Now picture that giant carousel suddenly grinding to a halt. In this video, we're going to dive into one of the most terrifying hypothetical scenarios imaginable as we bring you 50 chilling facts about what would happen if the Earth stopped spinning. Prepare yourselves. This journey will fundamentally change the way you see the world we live in. Before we plunge into the chaos, let's establish our starting point. Our planet is a colossal sphere, spinning on its axis at roughly 1,670 kilometers per hour at the equator. This rotation is responsible for the cycle of day and night. It influences our climate, drives ocean currents, and even generates Earth's vital protective magnetic field. Everything on the planet, including the atmosphere and the oceans, moves along with it as a unified mass. It is a fragile yet stable equilibrium that has sustained life for billions of years. And now we hit the cosmic brake to see exactly what happens to this finely tuned mechanism. The consequences begin in the very first fraction of a second. The first second, the Earth comes to a dead stop, but everything on its surface continues its movement, driven purely by inertia. Imagine slamming on the brakes in a car travelling at nearly 1,700 kilometers per hour. Except here, there are no seatbelts. Anything not bolted permanently to the bedrock, humans, animals, vehicles, trees, even the topsoil, will be instantly ripped from its foundation and sent hurtling eastward. It would be like running the entire surface of the planet through a gigantic blender. No terrestrial life form could possibly survive that instant. Even the strongest skyscrapers would be instantly scoured from the Earth's surface, dissolving into a supersonic cloud of debris. This isn't mere destruction. It is the instantaneous, absolute erasure of civilization from the map of the world. The atmosphere, propelled by inertia, will continue moving along with us. This will generate winds of a force humanity has never witnessed. Their velocity will rival the speed of the shockwave from an atomic bomb blast. These supersonic hurricanes will sweep across the globe, scouring the surface bare of anything that survived the initial inertial impact. They will possess such extreme erosive power that they will literally begin to shear down mountains and flatten the landscape. Air moving at tremendous speeds will carry billions of tons of sand, rocks, and debris, transforming into a global abrasive storm. Breathing will be impossible in such an atmosphere, and the intense friction will ignite widespread fires that consume entire continents. The same fate will befall the world's oceans. Water, possessing immense mass and inertia, will surge forward, forming tsunamis on an unimaginable scale. These won't be mere waves. They will be towering walls of water, dozens or even hundreds of kilometers high, sweeping across the land at supersonic speeds. They will penetrate thousands of kilometers inland, obliterating cities, leveling mountains, and wiping out all life in their path. The surge will reach the most remote interior regions, completely inundating the globe. Every landmass on the planet will temporarily vanish beneath the surface, while the tremendous kinetic energy of these waves generates intense friction and heat, literally scalding everything in their path. After that, the world will never be the same. After the initial inertial chaos subsides, a massive global redistribution of water will begin. Earth's rotation generates centrifugal force, which pulls the water outward near the equator, creating what is commonly known as the equatorial bulge. When this rotation abruptly ceases, that force instantly vanishes. The water, now subject only to the pull of gravity, will cascade from the equator directly toward the poles. The oceans will be fundamentally reshaped. Equatorial sea levels will plummet by many kilometers, exposing vast underwater plateaus and continental shelves. Simultaneously at the poles, water levels will surge so high that they inundate enormous land masses, drowning all of northern Canada, Siberia, and the entire continent of Antarctica. Ultimately, the planet will be dominated by two gigantic, newly formed polar oceans, This great planetary water migration will result in the formation of a new, single supercontinent. It will wrap around the Earth, effectively girdling the globe right along the equator. All current continents and islands caught in this zone will merge, becoming part of a single, unified landmass. The equatorial ocean floor, currently hidden beneath kilometres of water, will be exposed, transforming into a dry, desolate, and lifeless wasteland. This new world will be defined by two enormous oceans centred at the poles, flanking a single gigantic continent in the middle. The maps familiar to us today will instantly lose all meaning. Navigation, global trade routes, and the very concept of a continent, all of it would have to be completely rethought from scratch. That is, if anyone remains who is capable of undertaking the task. The planet wouldn't just change its maps, it would completely alter its form. Currently, because of its rotation, the Earth isn't a perfect sphere. It's slightly flattened at the poles and bulges at the equator, a shape we call a geoid. In fact, the equatorial diameter is roughly 42 kilometres greater than the distance between the poles. Once rotation stops, the planet, which is essentially a malleable body, will slowly begin to assume the shape of a perfect sphere under the influence of its own gravity. This process will take thousands of years, but it will be accompanied by tremendous geological activity. The Earth's crust would crack, buckle, and shift, leading to constant earthquakes and volcanic eruptions across the entire planet. Tectonic activity will reach its absolute climax. The abrupt cessation of the Earth's rotation will place the lithospheric plates under immense stress. Imagine abruptly stopping a spinning, raw egg yolk. Its surface immediately cracks. The exact same process will occur within the Earth's crust. Unprecedented earthquakes will erupt across the entire globe, tremors so massive that they exceed the limits of our current measurement scales. These will be magnitude 12, perhaps even 15, Richter scale quakes, powerful enough to split entire continents. Fault lines will rip through vast landmasses, and torrents of searing hot magma will surge up from the planet's depths to the surface. No structure, not even the most earthquake-resistant engineering marvel, could possibly survive these catastrophic oscillations. Following the earthquakes, every volcano on the planet will awaken, including long-extinct and dormant supervolcanoes such as Yellowstone. Magma, under immense pressure, will find its way out through countless fissures and cracks in the Earth's crust. The entire globe will be consumed by eruptions of unprecedented power. Billions of tons of ash, soot, and toxic gases, such as sulfur dioxide, will be violently injected into the atmosphere. This massive debris cloud will plunge the planet into a thick shroud, blocking all sunlight for decades. What follows is a so-called volcanic winter, but on a scale the Earth has never witnessed before. Surface temperatures will plummet rapidly, delivering yet another catastrophic blow to any life forms that manage to survive the initial disasters. One of the most catastrophic effects will be felt far above us in space. The rotation of Earth's molten metal core creates the dynamo effect, which generates our planet's magnetic field. This invisible shield, known as the magnetosphere, protects us from the damaging solar wind and cosmic radiation. Once the core's rotation stops, the core will eventually slow down and cease movement. The dynamo mechanism will switch off, and the magnetic field will rapidly weaken until it disappears entirely. Earth will be left completely defenseless against the harshness of space. This event would be a death sentence for all life on the surface, even for those organisms that somehow managed to survive all the previous cataclysms. Without its magnetic shield, Earth would face the full force of cosmic rays and the solar wind, a constant stream of charged particles originating from the sun. Radiation levels on the surface would skyrocket, increasing thousands of times and proving instantly lethal to all life. The solar wind would begin to gradually strip away the planet's atmosphere, a process mirroring what happened to Mars billions of years ago. Our dense, oxygen-rich atmosphere would eventually dissipate. The planet would begin its transformation into a cold, lifeless world, much like its red neighbour. This process would take millions of years, yet it would be completely irreversible. In the end, Earth would lose the single most vital ingredient for life, its air. Now let's talk about the time consequences. Halting the rotation would instantly spell the end of the familiar cycle of day and night. In this new reality, one day would effectively last an entire year. The planet would still orbit the sun, but crucially, it would stop spinning on its axis. This means one hemisphere of Earth would face the sun for 6 months straight, while the opposing half would be plunged into total darkness for that identical 6-month duration. Just try to imagine 6 months of continuous, scorching daylight, immediately followed by 6 months of chilling, unbroken, impenetrable night. The very concept of a solar day would simply cease to exist. We would be forced to adopt a completely new, extreme calendar, where the entire year is defined by a single, prolonged day and a single, prolonged night. The side of the planet experiencing the 6-month day will be subjected to an absolute inferno. The sun will hang static, fixed at a single point in the sky, relentlessly baking the surface. Temperatures will soar past 100 degrees Celsius and beyond. Any remaining oceans will boil off and vaporize. This saturation will trigger a devastating runaway greenhouse effect, creating an atmosphere dense with steam. The surface will quickly turn into a scorched wasteland. Molten sand will fuse into glass, and the intense thermal stress will cause the bedrock to crack and shatter. Any form of organic life will be instantaneously incinerated. This region of the planet will become completely incompatible with existence in any form known to us. 2. On the opposite, eternal night side, an Arctic cold will settle. Without the benefit of sunlight for 6 months, the surface will rapidly cool, radiating its remaining heat into space. Temperatures will plummet to -50 or even -100 degrees Celsius. Any remaining oceans will freeze solid, creating a layer of ice miles deep, extending all the way to the seafloor. Atmospheric gases, primarily carbon dioxide, will begin to condense and precipitate onto the surface as vast sheets of dry ice. This world of eternal darkness and deep freeze will be just as lifeless as its scorching counterpart. The planet will be forever split into 2 catastrophic extremes, a world of fire and a world of ice. Yet separating these 2 hostile environments, these 2 hells, will be a narrow band known as the Terminator, or the Twilight Zone. This line will divide eternal day from eternal night. Here, the sun will be perpetually poised on the horizon, creating an infinite, endless dawn or twilight. Theoretically, the conditions and temperatures within this zone could potentially be temperate and habitable. This habitable strip will slowly migrate across the planet's surface over the course of the year, tracking Earth's orbit around the sun. If humanity is to survive at all, it will only be possible within this narrow, constantly shifting boundary. It would be a nomadic existence, a perpetual chase of the sunset. But even the Terminator zone itself would be utterly uninhabitable. Where the scorching atmosphere meets the freezing air, colossal pressure differentials would be generated. This imbalance would give rise to constant, unrelenting hurricanes of incredible force, perpetually howling from the hot side toward the cold side. These winds would easily reach speeds of hundreds of kilometers per hour, making the construction of any durable surface shelter an impossibility. Air masses saturated with moisture from the boiling day side would collide violently with the frigid air of the dark side, unleashing the most powerful rain and snowstorms the planet has ever known. The Twilight Zone would truly be a realm of eternal tempest. Our faithful companion, the Moon, would also feel the effects. Currently, Earth's rotation transfers angular momentum to the Moon, causing it to slowly drift away from us at about 4 centimeters annually. If Earth were to stop rotating, this recession process would immediately cease. What's more, the Moon's tidal forces, which currently slow our planet's spin, would start working in reverse. Essentially, they would try to spin the Earth back up again. However, because the Earth's mass is so immense, the opposite effect would occur. The Moon would instead begin a slow, multi-million-year journey closer to our planet. Eventually, it would reach the Roche limit, where it would be torn apart by Earth's powerful gravity, ultimately forming a dramatic system of rings around our planet, much like those surrounding Saturn. All artificial satellites orbiting in low Earth orbit are essentially doomed. Their stability relies on a delicate balance between their velocity and the gravitational pull of the planet. While they won't halt instantly, Their orbits will immediately become critically unstable. They would begin rapid orbital decay. Within days, weeks, or perhaps months, they would re-enter the denser layers of the atmosphere, burning up or scattering debris back to the surface. The International Space Station, the entire GPS network, and vital communication satellites, our entire modern space infrastructure, upon which civilization depends, would be completely lost. We would suddenly find ourselves isolated from space, and crucially, isolated from one another. The concept of time, as we currently understand it, would vanish. Our 24-hour cycle, divided into hours, minutes, and seconds, is directly linked to the Earth's rotation. Without this spin, our calendar would become obsolete. Hours, minutes, and seconds would lose their fundamental connection to any natural, repeating cycle. The only constant measure of time remaining would be the year, one full orbit of the Earth around the Sun. But that year would consist solely of a single, endless day and a single, endless night. Should humanity survive, it would need to invent an entirely new system of chronometry, perhaps based on the apparent movement of the stars, or on artificial clocks maintained deep within underground bunkers. The sky above will change beyond recognition. During the day, it will be blindingly bright, perhaps even hazy or milky white, due to the massive amounts of water vapour in the atmosphere. The sun will be a fixed, scorching pinprick of light. Conversely, the night side will reveal an incredible spectacle without the interference of light pollution, and through the thinned atmosphere, the stars will blaze with unimaginable brilliance. The Milky Way will appear as a bright, shimmering river of light. The constellations themselves will remain motionless for months at a time, only slowly tracking across the sky over the course of a year. It will be both the most beautiful and the most lethal stellar view humanity has ever witnessed. Gravity on the Earth's surface would shift noticeably. The centrifugal force generated by the planet's spin slightly counteracts gravity, making us feel lighter, especially near the equator. This effect is minimal, only about 0.3%, but once the rotation ceases, that outward force vanishes instantly. Consequently, everything on the planet would become subtly heavier. An 80-kilogram person standing on the equator, for example, would suddenly weigh roughly 250 grams more. While this is a minor alteration, it translates into new, permanent stress on all planetary structures, both natural landforms and artificial construction. In a world already on the brink of collapse, even this small shift could very well be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Plant life across the entire planet would die off. On the day side, they would be utterly incinerated by the scorching sun and unrelenting drought. Photosynthesis, a process that relies on a precise balance of light and darkness, would cease completely. On the night side, plants would simply freeze solid, killed both by the lack of light and the extreme cold. And in the Terminator zone, continuous devastating hurricanes would simply rip them clean from the soil. This wholesale destruction marks the end of all surface vegetation, leading inevitably to the total collapse of all global food webs. Herbivores, assuming they even survive the initial catastrophe, would quickly starve, and the predators that feed on them would soon follow. The Earth's biosphere would be utterly annihilated. Without oxygen-producing plants, and considering the solar wind would continually strip away the atmosphere, the very composition of the air would begin to shift dramatically. Remaining oxygen would gradually react with surface rocks, oxidizing them entirely, causing its concentration in the atmosphere to steadily drop. Meanwhile, continuous volcanic eruptions would pump massive amounts of carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide into the air. Over time, Earth's atmosphere would become poisonous and utterly unsuitable for sustaining life. The planet would slowly follow the path of Venus, transforming into a superheated greenhouse with a dense toxic atmosphere where life simply cannot exist. The only place life could theoretically survive is the deep ocean, particularly around hydrothermal vents, which are commonly known as black smokers. These unique ecosystems are entirely independent of sunlight and photosynthesis. Instead, they derive their energy from chemical reactions occurring deep within the Earth's interior. Chemosynthetic bacteria could thrive in these extreme conditions, sustaining the existence of specialized deep-sea organisms. Perhaps it is there, in the eternal darkness and under immense pressure, that the spark of life on Earth will not be extinguished, remaining for billions of years until surface conditions become favorable once more. Human survival will necessitate moving deep underground. The surface will become a deadly trap due to lethal radiation, extreme temperatures, and catastrophic hurricanes. It will be crucial to construct autonomous subterranean cities, engineered to sustain life for decades, even centuries. These cities will require closed-loop life support systems, artificial lighting to facilitate hydroponic food cultivation, and powerful energy sources, most likely utilizing geothermal or nuclear technology. Humanity will transform into a mole civilization, permanently severed from the starry night sky and the sunlight that was once the very source of life. The psychological consequences for survivors will be devastating. Life in confined spaces, devoid of the natural cycle of day and night, and without access to natural light, will exert immense pressure on the human psyche. The very concepts of morning and evening will simply cease to exist. Circadian rhythms, the systems that govern our biological clocks, will be completely disrupted. This will result in widespread depression, chronic insomnia, and severe anxiety disorders. A society confined within cramped bunkers will confront new social problems, including debilitating claustrophobia, escalating aggression, and a profound loss of motivation. The survival of the body will depend entirely on the survival of the mind, and that will prove to be an equally formidable challenge. Even sound itself will change. The speed of sound is dependent upon the medium's density and temperature. In the scorching atmosphere of the daylight side, sound will travel faster, while the frigid air of the night side will significantly slow it down. At the terminator line, where the hot and cold air masses converge, bizarre acoustic phenomena will emerge. Sonic mirages, complex echoes, and severe distortion. The thunder of perpetual storms will propagate for thousands of kilometers, generating a constant low-frequency drone, a sound that would drive any life form capable of hearing it to madness. The entire world will be submerged in eternal cacophony. The constellations in the night sky would essentially freeze in place. With Earth's rotation stopped, the stars would cease their familiar daily trek across the firmament. Consequently, each hemisphere would be perpetually exposed to just its own half of the night sky throughout the entire 6-month dark period. The only observable motion would be the slow annual shift of the constellations, caused solely by the Earth's revolution around the Sun. While this might seem like a minor detail, for disciplines like astronomy and navigation, assuming they still exist, it would represent an absolute paradigm shift. The night sky would become an immutable, fixed tableau, a constant picture reminding observers of the cosmic motion that once defined it. The auroras will vanish. These incredible light shows in the sky occur when charged particles from the solar wind interact with the Earth's magnetic field near the poles. But once the magnetic field is gone, those particles will no longer be funneled toward the poles. Instead, they will bombard the entire surface of the planet. Instead of beautiful light shows, what we'll get is lethal radiation. The sky will lose one of its most mesmerizing phenomena, a grim symbol of the planet's decline. Beauty will give way to invisible cosmic death. All rivers and lakes would either dramatically change their course or vanish entirely. River flow is largely determined by the Coriolis force, a direct consequence of the Earth's rotation. This force causes rivers in the northern hemisphere to erode their right banks, and those in the southern hemisphere to erode their left banks. If the Earth stopped spinning, the Coriolis force would cease to exist. Rivers would immediately lose their established channels and instead flow along the path of least resistance, straight downhill. This catastrophic change would trigger massive floods in some areas and severe, widespread droughts in others. Ultimately, as global water is redistributed, the majority of rivers would simply dry up, leaving behind nothing but immense, barren canyons where water once flowed. The issue of space debris is set to reach a critical stage. Thousands of fragments from old satellites and rockets, currently circling Earth, will inevitably lose their stable orbits. They will begin their descent toward the planet, transforming into a fiery rain of incandescent metal. This phenomenon would resemble a continuous meteor storm, one that could persist for months or even years. As each piece of debris enters the atmosphere, it would pose a lethal threat to everything on the surface below. The sky would be streaked with the burning trails of this falling debris, a sobering legacy of humanity's space age. The Doppler effect for sound and light will function differently. A classic example is an ambulance siren. The sound's pitch seems higher as the vehicle approaches and lower as it moves away. This occurs because the sound source is moving relative to the observer. Since Earth is constantly rotating, this same effect currently manifests on a global scale. If the planet's rotation were to stop, these subtle but crucial effects, which are essential for precise measurements, would disappear entirely. This cessation would immediately impact the functioning of radar systems, navigation technology, and astronomical observations. The world would become fundamentally more static, not only mechanically, but also in terms of wave dynamics. Global warming or global cooling? Perhaps both simultaneously. The world will split into two distinct climate zones. The global average temperature may not even change, but its distribution will become catastrophic. One hemisphere will be transformed into a Venus-like environment, while the other mimics the icy moons of Jupiter. This would create the steepest temperature gradient imaginable. Any discussion about a global warming increase of just a few degrees will become completely meaningless against the backdrop of a world where one side is boiling and the other is freezing solid. Communication between the hemispheres would become virtually impossible. Without satellites, and given that the surface would be impassable, radio waves would be the only viable means of communication left. However, the ionosphere, which normally reflects radio waves, enabling long-distance transmission, would be severely damaged by solar radiation. Communication would become unreliable, functioning only across very limited distances. Surviving groups scattered across different parts of the planet would find themselves completely isolated. They would have no way of knowing if anyone else had survived. Each refuge would effectively become its own separate, isolated world. We face a mass extinction event of global marine life. The rapid shift in temperature, salinity and chemical composition resulting from ocean turnover will decimate the majority of sea creatures. Coral reefs, the very rainforest of the ocean, will be the first casualties. Plankton, the crucial foundation of the entire marine food web, will collapse under such pressures. The oceans will be transformed into sterile, poisonous waters. Even deep-sea organisms will suffer the effects of the disaster, as the bodies of millions of dead surface dwellers rain down upon them. Geostationary satellites would inevitably come crashing down. These specialized satellites typically hover motionless over a fixed point on the equator, a feat achieved because their orbital velocity precisely matches the Earth's rate of spin. However, if the Earth were to stop rotating, these satellites would continue along their existing orbits, traveling at over 11,000 kilometers per hour. To an observer on the ground, they would streak dramatically across the sky before dipping rapidly below the horizon. Crucially, their orbits would no longer remain stable. Eventually, every one of them would fall back to Earth. The majority of this debris would impact the equatorial region, turning the area into yet another catastrophic zone of destruction. All the culture and knowledge humanity has amassed, stored physically in libraries, museums and archives, would be instantly wiped out in the very first moments. Books, paintings, sculptures, computer servers, they would all be reduced to dust. Even digital data stored in the cloud, housed on servers scattered across the globe, would be lost right along with the hardware. The only chance of preserving humanity's legacy lies in the data sent into deep space on probes like the Voyagers, or perhaps information that survivors managed to secure within deep underground bunkers. We stand to lose the entirety of our history. The very notions of East and West would become obsolete. These directions are inextricably linked to the Earth's rotation, the rising and the setting of the sun. On a tidally locked planet, the sun would remain fixed in the sky over the permanent day side and would be completely absent from the night side. The only remaining geographic anchors would be north and south, defined solely by the planetary poles. Perhaps new cardinal points would emerge, sunward, the direction toward the fixed point where the light always stands, and shadowward, the direction plunging toward eternal night. Both geography and language would have to evolve to reflect this new, terrifying reality. What happens to the air we exhale? Carbon dioxide is heavier than oxygen and nitrogen. On our rotating planet, winds and convection constantly mix the atmosphere. But in a static world, gases might slowly begin to stratify under the influence of gravity. Carbon dioxide would pool in low-lying areas, creating deadly, unbreathable traps. Survivors would constantly have to monitor the air composition and avoid any low ground that could become a toxic gas lake. Even the very air we once took for granted would turn into an enemy. The problem of waste disposal in these subterranean cities will soon become critical. In a closed ecosystem, nothing can simply be thrown away. All waste, both organic and industrial, will require 100% recycling. Any failure in the disposal system could contaminate the air or water supply and quickly trigger epidemics. The survivors will have to become masters of resource management, establishing a perfect circular economy with zero tolerance for waste. In such a world, the price of error is swift and agonizing death for the entire colony. A completely new form of government and social organization will be required. Old laws and ideologies, developed for a world of abundance and growth, will be utterly useless in an underground bunker where every single resource is critical. We will likely see the rise of harsh, authoritarian regimes that tightly control the allocation of food, water, and air. Individual freedom will become a luxury the community simply cannot afford. Every member of the colony will function merely as a cog in the massive mechanism of survival. This environment will inevitably present new ethical dilemmas. What should be done about the sick, the elderly, and those who are unable to contribute? The answers to these questions are likely to be brutal. Evolution is set to take a radically different course. Should any life on Earth manage to adapt to these new conditions, it will be utterly unrecognizable. In the Terminator Zone, a world of perpetual twilight and fierce hurricanes, we might see the emergence of low-slung, squat organisms, highly specialized, to cling securely to the surface. Deep within subterranean caves, blind creatures could evolve, relying solely on heightened senses of hearing and smell. Meanwhile, at the bottom of the oceans, near the hydrothermal vents, or black smokers, life will continue its slow development. Perhaps, billions of years from now, that life will finally return to the surface, only to find an alien, unrecognizable world waiting for them. The colour of the sky, even on the twilight side, will be completely transformed. In the Terminator Zone, where the sun perpetually hovers just above the horizon, the light must pierce an immensely thicker layer of atmosphere. This will cause intense scattering of blue and green wavelengths, mirroring the effect we observe during our own sunsets here on Earth. Consequently, the sky in this region will be permanently stained with dramatic hues of orange, red, and violet. This is a realm of eternal, dramatic twilight, a spectacle that is simultaneously heartbreakingly beautiful and profoundly tragic. It serves as the ultimate backdrop for the end of the world. But what if the slowing down wasn't immediate? What if the Earth were to decelerate gradually, spanning decades? This would, theoretically, give humanity time to prepare, to build shelters. Yet, the repercussions would be equally horrific. Days would grow progressively longer. The climate would shift dramatically, triggering extreme droughts and devastating floods. Panic would ensue, followed by wars for dwindling resources and the few remaining spots in underground bunkers. A slow-motion apocalypse might prove even more brutal than an instantaneous one, forcing humanity to watch its own demise unfold in real time and revealing the absolute worst aspects of our nature. Could the Earth ever be kick-started again? Theoretically, yes, if a sufficient amount of energy were directed at the planet in the precise required direction, say by detonating thousands of nuclear bombs in a specific sequence along the equator, or perhaps engineering a series of high-impact collisions with asteroids. It might be possible to give the planet a new rotational impulse. However, This would require technology and resources far beyond the reach of the few survivors left huddled in underground bunkers. This is a task for a civilization of cosmic scale. For the remnants of humanity, this would remain nothing more than an impossible dream. The clouds as we know them would vanish entirely. Cloud formation and major weather systems like cyclones and anticyclones are intrinsically tied to the Earth's rotation and the resulting Coriolis effect. In a static world, weather patterns would become brutally simple and far more extreme. The dayside would feature a scorching, cloudless sky because all available moisture would instantly evaporate. On the night side, the skies would be either clear and frigid or perpetually shrouded in a low, icy haze. Meanwhile, the terminator zone, the boundary between day and night, would be ravaged by perpetual, violent thunderstorms. The familiar cirrus, cumulus, and stratus cloud types we recognize would simply cease to exist. Launching into space directly from the Earth's surface would become virtually impossible. Right now, we utilize the planet's rotation, launching rockets eastward to harness that extra velocity boost. This results in massive fuel savings. Starting from a motionless planet, reaching orbit would demand a significantly greater expenditure of energy. Every launch would have to fight the full, unrelenting pull of the gravity well. Considering collapsed infrastructure and a complete lack of resources, the very idea of escaping this dying planet becomes an insurmountable challenge. Humanity would be permanently locked inside the cradle that has ultimately become its grave. The polar ice caps will completely vanish, merging into the new polar oceans. The colossal freshwater reserves locked in the Greenland and Antarctic ice sheets will dilute the saline ocean water. This influx will sharply decrease the salinity of the polar oceans, fundamentally altering their chemical composition and freezing point. While this might seem like a minor technical detail amidst a planetary catastrophe, it serves as yet another clear example of how the Earth's vital life-sustaining global systems will be irreversibly dismantled. A balance built over millions of years will be annihilated in a matter of months. Farming, even in underground bunkers, will encounter massive difficulties. Lacking natural sunlight, these operations will rely entirely on artificial lighting, demanding colossal energy consumption. Furthermore, many plants rely on insects for pollination, and these species will die off on the surface. Survivors will be forced to either engineer artificial pollinators or painstakingly hand-pollinate the crops. Any single malfunction in the lighting, irrigation, or ventilation systems could lead to total crop failure and widespread starvation. Ultimately, securing a reliable food supply will undoubtedly be the most critical and complex challenge facing the survivors. But perhaps the most terrifying consequence, our planet, our blue marble, the very cradle of life, would become nothing more than a barren chunk of rock, violently split into two catastrophic extremes. One half, a scorched, eternal desert, the other, an unforgiving, frozen wasteland. It would stand as a silent monument to the fragility and uniqueness of life, a stark testament to how one single factor, rotation, manages to sustain this incredible planetary diversity. Prospective explorers gazing down from space wouldn't see a living world, they would see a scar, a permanent reminder that even the most stable, robust systems are subject to catastrophic failure. It would be the greatest tragedy in cosmic history, unfolding in complete and utter silence, potentially witnessed by no one at all. From planet-scouring supersonic winds to the eternal day, searing one half of the globe, and the perpetual night freezing the other. The Earth suddenly grinding to a halt wouldn't just be a disaster, it would be a complete rewrite of the laws of physics and biology governing our home. This thought experiment truly reveals just how delicate our world is and how utterly dependent we are on that unseen, constant motion. We are living on a giant merry-go-round, and if it stops, it means the end of everything we know. Thank you for joining us on this apocalyptic journey to the very end. If these facts disturbed or shocked you, please remember to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next incredible scenario. Now for the big question, do you think humanity would have even one chance of survival in such a world, perhaps underground or maybe in the zone of eternal twilight? Drop your wildest theories in the comments section below. Let's discuss.